If you enjoy metroidvanias, gorgeous immersive interconnected worlds, or just simply terrific video games, you will almost certainly have encountered or at least heard about Hollow Knight. In case you've spent the last few years under a rock or stumbling through vaults and caverns beneath the ground like most of Hollow Knight's inhabitants, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to the Kickstarter-funded indie smash hit from 2017, which initially delighted countless PC gamers and subsequently the console community as well. Hollow Knight is a 2D Metroidvania action-adventure that takes players to Hallownest, an ancient kingdom full of bugs. The player takes control of a nameless knight who travels across a massive interconnected game world. The game became a huge commercial success. The PC version had sold 1 million copies by June of 2018. This was the day before the game was released on the Nintendo Switch, where the game really took off in terms of sales. If you add in console sales, Hollow Knight has sold 2.8 million copies by February 2019, which is the last official number I could find. The game received universal acclaim from both critics and the gaming community. Destructoid praised it as a masterpiece of gaming and called it a piece of art worthy of being in a museum. PC gamers Tom Marks described the game as a modern classic. In general, reviewers spoke highly of Hollow Knight's atmosphere, visuals, sound and music. The excellent gameplay and the replay value were also received with the highest praise. The game won the award for Best Platformer in PC Gamer's 2017 Game of the Year Awards. Polygon later named the game among the decade's best. 97% of the more than 150,000 Steam reviews for the game were positive. The game has a comparably steep difficulty curve and is probably not the best starting point for absolute beginners when it comes to video games. Eurogamer, for example, called the game ruthlessly tough and even occasionally unfair. The reviewer from Destructoid, on the other hand, never found any of the bosses to be unfair. I would agree with the latter. When dying in Hollow Knight, deep down you always know that it's your own fault. In my opinion, Hollow Knight provides an ideal mix of 2D platforming, exploration and a refined and very responsive combat system. The exploration part is executed masterfully and works surprisingly well considering the omnipresent lack of any directional clues that tell you where to go next. Because of this, the player is forced to discover the environment naturally, which provides a deep sense of accomplishment that pushes you deeper and deeper into the world of Hallownest. The magnificent soundtrack by Christopher Larkin does a tremendous job of contributing to how organic and alive the world feels. Many of the little secrets are, as usual in Metroidvanias, gated behind the acquisition of certain movement abilities, which are required to overcome obstacles along your way. The gameplay is simple, brilliant and challenging at the same time, which becomes especially apparent in most of the 47 perfectly orchestrated boss fights. With every fight you'll notice that you've learned something new and that you are improving at the core gameplay mechanics. Most of the boss fights feel like a mesmerizing dance, challenging the player to adapt to his opponent's abilities, attack patterns and specific rhythm. One of the most iconic bosses from Hollow Knight is Hornet, a female character that confronts the player twice during the course of the game's main campaign. Hornet transitions to the main character for Hollow Knight's soon-to-be-released successor Silksong. Everything we know about Silksong comes from just a few sources. These include an announcement trailer and videos from a playable E3 demo, a video interview coming directly from teamcherry, and lots of information on the game's official website and blog. In addition, Edge magazine has published a 16-page cover story about Silksong. I will put down a link to all these sources in the description. The idea of us as players taking control over Hornet originated during the Kickstarter campaign for Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight was announced on Kickstarter in late 2014, with the developers aiming for a quite modest initial goal of raising 35,000 Australian dollars to provide the necessary resources to continue with the development process of Hollow Knight. This goal was quickly achieved, raising 57,000 Australian dollars from more than 2,100 backers. With this money, teamcherry was able to recruit another developer, David Kazi, as well as Christopher Larkin. Larkin is responsible for the game's outstanding soundtrack. The beta of Hollow Knight started in September 2015 and the Kickstarter campaign continued with some stretch goals along the way. Among them were the 4 released DLCs Hidden Dreams, The Grim Tube, Lifeblood and Godmaster. Today we know that the most important stretch goal was the implementation of another playable character. This was supposed to be Hornet. It took not long for Team Cherry to realize that the claustrophobic Hello Nest, which suited the Nameless Knight so well, was kind of constraining for the bigger, weightier, faster and more agile Hornet. This led to the idea to create a whole new kingdom and in consequence a whole new game with Hornet as the main protagonist. Right at the beginning of the game, Hornet is kidnapped and finds herself all alone in Falloom, a world completely unknown to her. In striking contrast to the knight who has journeyed deeper and deeper into Hello Nest's underground corridors, Hornet's path through the kingdom Falloom leads upward to a citadel that represents a sacred place of pilgrimage for many of the characters that Hornet will meet along her way. The sacred citadel at the top of Falloom represents the first major goal for the player. It could be that Silksong speedrunners will finish their any percent runs up there. That said, drawing from our experiences with the original game, I'm sure there will be lots of work to be done after reaching the citadel. Team Cherry promised to evoke the feeling of exploring a vast, surprising new world once again and to create a game that matches or even exceeds the scale, diversity and quality of the original game. With one of the latest updates to the game, the developers mentioned that they had only recently added the enemies 163, 164 and 165 to the game. Regarding this number, Silksong is already similar in size to Hollow Knight at this point, and according to the developers it won't end there. In Hollow Knight, players have already been able to complete some smaller tasks that were embedded into the world and story. In Silksong, this system is expanded with a more sophisticated quest system. You can keep track of the quests you have accepted and find notice boards scattered around the kingdom Falloom. In the playable demo, one of these notice boards was seen in Bone Bottom. The quests also vary in type. They are divided in Hunt, Wayfarer and Gather quests. These names suggest that the quest system will offer enough variety to satisfy different types of players, ranging from combat enthusiasts onto gatherers all the way to explorers who want to get lost in the atmospheric world. In general, the acrobatic physique of Hornet seems to push the game's emphasis a bit more towards platforming than it did in Hollow Knight, where the hardest gameplay challenges were found primarily in boss fights apart from the infamous Path of Pain. As a big fan of hardcore platformers like Celeste or Super Meat Boy, I would immediately welcome an increased emphasis on platforming elements. As the daughter of Hera and the Pale King, lore-wise she's not a bee but rather a half spider, half worm. As such, her body produces silk, which is her version of the knight's soul power. Like Soul, Silk enables Hornet's healing and many of her offensive abilities. Unlike the Knight, Hornet is able to heal instantly and even mid-air. The downside is that unlike Focus, Bind depletes all remaining Silk each time Hornet uses it. That means that you spend more time either at full health or almost dead, which adds an additional dynamic and another layer of excitement to the fights. When Hornet dies, she leaves a cocoon similar to the Knight's Shade. Striking the cocoon will fully replenish Hornet's silk pool. Another element that is not changing are checkpoints. In order to save your progress, you will have to find a bench and sit down on it. The same goes for the map system, which will follow the path of the original game. When entering a new area for the first time, there will be almost no guidance to navigate you. Fortunately, along Hornet's way, she will meet Chakra, who will aid her with maps, compasses and various other tools that provide some additional orientation. Chakra will be Silksong's equivalent to Cornifer the cartographer. With the help of a fast travel system, Hornet will eventually be able to traverse great distances after you unlock the new stack stations, just like in the predecessor. Team Cherry has already stated that the second game will remain close to Hollow Knight in terms of difficulty. However, beginners who have never played the first game are expected to be able to get the hang of it quickly without any issues. The crafting system of Hollow Knight was predominantly limited to the improvement of the Knight's Nail, which simply made enemies die after taking less hits with your nail. Silksong introduces a more elaborate system that allows Hornet to craft weapons by using shell shards from enemies. These weapons might make the decisive difference in a fiery skirmish. So far we know about the following weapons. The so-called Pimpulo bomb is actually a huge AoE blast. The sting shards, which should be familiar to everyone who has encountered Hornet for the second time in the original game, extend spikes while in air or when being struck with a weapon. Last but not least, Hornet can throw straight pins just like a kunai and is even able to upgrade this weapon to throw 3 pins instead of a single one. Hornet will learn the mastery of crafting by some of the residents of Falun. Hollow Knight's magnificent composer Christopher Larkin is back with more strings matching the silk theme around Hornet, her needle and her thread. The focus on a more orchestral soundtrack is also explained by the fact that Larkin this time had a real orchestra to his disposal instead of just being reliant on his computer-made sound creations for the Hollow Knight soundtrack. To date, Silksong's complete score includes around 30 tracks with several more to come. That's already a step above Hollow Knight's 26 tracks if you do not include the DLC songs. Why is Silksong development taking so long? The Hollow Knight fan community has been starving for more than 2 years now. There is one fan on the game's subreddit who started to put out poor drawing every single day until Silksong finally releases. A funny and pretty ironic statement I've read in this context is that he could become a real artist once the game finally arrives. Nowadays, before every Nintendo Direct or Indie World, you can find multiple reports and tweets throughout the internet about Silksong making an appearance or even getting a release date. These hopes have been consistently disappointed throughout the last 2 years. The fact that the Switch version of Hollow Knight was also introduced during a Nintendo Direct and was immediately available in the Nintendo eShop right after the presentation does not really help to lower expectations. Despite this, I think we will have to be a little more patient and that our patience will be eventually rewarded with a wonderful experience once Silksong is released. In fact, I don't think we've all had that long of a wait so far. Just think about what the fans of the A Song of Ice and Fire book series by George R. R. Martin should say, who are still waiting for The Winds of Winter to release. The original book, A Game of Thrones, was published in 1996. The next 4 installments of the series have been published in 1999, 2000, 2005 and 2011. Since then, 10 years have passed. To put that into perspective, the first Game of Thrones episode also aired in 2011. The point I'm trying to emphasize is that the creation of art is no linear or predictable process and can take inconceivable amounts of time. In addition, it can be assumed that huge expectations by the fanbase and constant pressure via social media won't have any beneficial effects on the artistic progress. As gamers, we really desire polished games that reveal the passion and dedication that the developers invested into their project. A rushed release would be the absolute antithesis to this approach. Especially in recent years, countless games have been released that seemed kinda rushed and unfinished. Just think of Cyberpunk 2077. Not even the most hyped game in the world has been able to completely recover its reputation after a terrible release full of bugs and glitches. While Cyberpunk was certainly the most prominent and frequently criticized example, numerous AAA games such as Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Warcraft Reforged, Fallout 76 and No Man's Sky, just to name a few, were not really finished or had bugs that ruined the overall experience for the buying customer at launch. Such things are simply unthinkable in any other form of art outside the gaming industry. Let's be honest, who would accept to see the latest science fiction blockbuster at the cinema with only a fraction of the special effects finished? Alternatively, how would you feel about reading a book where the final 50 pages are missing? The urge to make money might have played a role as well. Following the commercial success of Hollow Knight, teamcherry is probably in a much better financial position today. For example, Ari Gibson has mentioned that towards the end of Hollow Knight's development cycle, he was no longer able to afford a croissant frequently. This is a prime example and really representative for many indie developers. We love to hear about these success stories like Hollow Knight or The Binding of Isaac. But the sad reality is that for every Hollow Knight, for every Celeste and for every Stardew Valley, there are hundreds of developers with great potential and numerous ambitious games that never see the light of day and can't be finished or fleshed out solely because of the high upfront risk and huge time investment the developers have to take. In conclusion, I have faith in Team Cherry and hope that they will take as much time as they need without any restricting deadlines. The developers themselves explained that they will release Silksong when it's ready and when it matches the quality and scale of Hollow Knight, and added that they will talk about a release date when they are 100% certain that they can hit it. My inspired guess for a release date would be the first half of 2022. With that in mind, let's embrace the long wait and take another journey to Hollow Nest, or give Hollow Knight a shot in case you haven't played it before. This is the first video I've ever made and I really hope you enjoyed it. If so, I would appreciate a sub and a thumbs up. Feel free to leave a comment on which aspect of Silksong you are looking forward to the most.